What's up, my boomers? It's me, Melanie Mac, here on my social commentary channel, Melanie Mac Go Boom. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. Good news, my channel is now eligible for Super Thanks, I think it's called. I don't know how it even works, where the button is, but if you just want another way to know how to support my channel, this is enabled across all videos. You can leave a super thank, which I believe lets you leave a comment with a special color around it and all that. And I don't even know if I don't know. It's a way to leave a tip on my channel if you wish to do so. I know some of y'all are on my subscribe star, which I have linked in the description. I thank you so much for that because it does help out a ton. But for those who do not use subscribe star, or you just want another way to know how to support, that's one way to do it. Also, okay, I just got to give a shout out to my sponsor, G Fuel, because right now code MAC is good for 30% off. It's got another boost now through the 9th. So that's another way you can support me and my channel, is whenever you get your hydration or energy drink needs through G Fuel with code MAC. So, on gfuel.com. So enough of that. Enough of the plugging my stuff, my sponsor stuff. Let me go ahead and get to today's topic. Y'all know I like talking about Tomb Raider, and this is something that is constantly being talked about because Square Enix wasn't happy with the Reboot trilogy's sales. They didn't meet expectations, and everyone thought they were so unreasonable for that because, I mean, the game sold a lot of units. However, there's so much more to it than just that. I've been trying to say this. At first, I was like, oh yeah, wow, why are they not happy? That's a lot of units. I remember when the rebooted game sold a crap ton. But here's the thing. Each game had like $100 million plus budgets. And then when you factor in the fact that so many, not even that long after release, at least for Rise and Shadow, they went on sale. They were for dirt cheap at some points. They were giving the games away at some points. So, yeah, if you really do like a comparison, and people want to act like, oh, Crystal Dynamics saved Tomb Raider, blah, blah, blah. Well, first of all, ever since Crystal Dynamics got a hold of the series with Legend, the Legend trilogy sold the worst out of any era. It sold terribly, okay? I want to say, man, this is just going off memory, but I don't even think Legend was able to meet what Angel Darkness sold, and Angel Darkness is the reason why Core Design lost Tomb Raider. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong with that. I can't remember, but I know if it was sold better, it wasn't that much. But yeah, the Legend trilogy sold terribly, and so then the rebooted trilogy sold a lot more, and the numbers look good. But when you got games that are freaking $100 million plus budgets, you compare that to something like the classics, the originals, which obviously newer games are going to have bigger budgets because there's a lot more that goes into it. But just saying, people want to act like Crystal Dynamics saved Tomb Raider and Tomb Raider is the most successful it's ever been. Like, bro, the classic Tomb Raider games have like the equivalent with inflation $1 million budgets, okay? 1 million, just one. That is that's literally 1/100th of the budget that the games have now. And when you factor in comparable sales, they were pretty close. I mean, I want to say the first of the rebooted games is the only game that has outsold Tomb Raider 1 and 2, or at least really close. So, yeah. I mean, dude, back in the day with the classics, and especially like the employees were also getting percentages based on success. Like, dude, some of them were on the original dev team were able to just retire and live it up because they made so much money on the original games. So let's stop acting like Crystal Dynamics is the hero of Tomb Raider here. Now, something else is that, it's just like, in my opinion, this is what happens when you take a property like Tomb Raider that was, created in British hands. It had that charm to it. And you give it to an American studio and they Americanize and Hollywoodize it and make it so mainstream Hollywood feeling. It changes the entire essence of it. And add these huge big budgets just for these fancy cutscenes that are not necessary. I've been saying this for years, and I'm finally feeling somewhat heard now. You don't have to pour in $100 million budgets into these games. Let Tomb Raider be more simple. Let Tomb Raider be more what it was originally created to be. Focus on the gameplay. Stop putting so much money in these stupid overdramatic cutscenes that most people in the fan base don't like anyway, because it's not. Tomb Raider was never supposed to be a dramatic story until Angel of Darkness rolled around, and even then I didn't like that. So let me go ahead and get into the article before I just go on the biggest tangent imaginable. The Gamer says, because, obviously, they sold Tomb Raider for 100. Eidos Montreal and Crystal Dynamics, so that's not even just Tomb Raider. But just Tomb Raider alone being sold for only $300 million is, insulting in a way. It's so dirt cheap for one of the most iconic franchises of all time. But there's a reason for it. There's a legit reason for it, because it hasn't been performing because of how it's been handled. All right? So Square Enix just doesn't want to spend money on AAA games anymore. Yeah, I would love it if Tomb Raider did not feel AAA anymore. Don't let Tomb Raider be AAA anymore. Let it feel like almost somewhat indie and focus on, take away all those fancy cutscenes. Drop cutscenes in for a reward. Take away the realistic art style and feel of it. Let Tomb Raider be Tomb Raider again. Stylized art. No need for fancy mocaps. No need for all this realism. Not needed. They could make Tomb Raider for a fraction of the budget and make it a lot better and more fun. Stick to the old formula. Square Enix has just sold 3 of its biggest studios. Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal have all been sold to Embracer Group for the relatively low price of $300 million in cold hard cash. For the makers of AAA blockbusters like Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, and Guardians of the Galaxy, that seems like a seriously small amount. And yet, Square Enix seems happy to divest itself of the prestigious studios in the name of future profitability. I really don't blame them. Nico Partners analyst Daniel Ahmad broke down the numbers for us. The profit margins on running Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal were far lower than Square Enix's other studios. Crystal Dynamics had an operating profit margin of 3.6%. Or 3.6%. Okay, while Eidos Montreal squeaked by with just 0.65%. in 2021. Okay, so let's stop pretending like, oh, all these sales. Yeah, it doesn't matter what your sales are. It's all about return on investment. If the investment is colossal, then sales numbers don't mean crap if they're not pulling in enough revenue. They're barely breaking even. Barely over breaking even at this point. Square Enix overall had an operating profit of 14.2% last year, meaning the sold studios were vastly underperforming compared to other parts of the company. Okay? Daniel says it's worth noting that these expectations are always backed by something tangible, and in Square Enix's case, it's the cost associated with running the studio plus developing the game. In layman's terms, they spent too much and got a low return. Thank you. I've been trying to say this, and I don't know why. I don't even know why. I've been trying to say this for, years. When people talk about the sales of Tomb Raider, and I'm like, bro, they're spending $100 million or more per game right now. It's absurd. It's come on, this is simple math. But this is less about Eidos Montreal or Crystal Dynamics underperforming and more about the fact that these studios just make expensive games, and expensive games can sometimes take years to recoup their initial investments, if they ever do at all. Yes, that's why stop making the game so stupid expensive. At the end of the day, when you're playing something like Tomb Raider, think of the classic games, man. The focus was gameplay. The focus was the dynamic platforming that didn't have auto grab and that didn't have shiny ledges telling you where to go and that didn't have your character telling you what to do next. It was a true adventure, okay? It was a difficult game. They were difficult games in the fact that You actually had to use your brain. Even just platforming, you were looking at stuff like, okay, so I got to do a running jump for this. Then I got to jump here, do a short jump here, then do a flip here because the ground isn't solid, and then grab the ledge here. And there's just so much calculating that went into it. And so the game, what the selling point was for the games were the actual gameplay. You wanted to experience it. And that's the thing about the classic games, is that you can watch someone else play it, but ultimately the most fun lies in experiencing it, because the substance was in the gameplay itself. Now, whenever you have all of your substance and only cutscenes, then you don't even really have to play it. You can watch other people play it. And the thing is classic Tomb Raider still had good cutscenes for their time, but they were just like, they were thrown in as a reward. They weren't just constant. And the way that the rebooted games, it's just constant cutscenes, constant over dramatic stuff, wanting you to feel sorry for Lara Croft, all this fancy mocap, all this stuff that's just unnecessary. It's an interactive movie. You one and done. You play it, you're done with it type thing. You can just get the experience of the rebooted games simply by watching. That's it. Because when you factor in the actual gameplay itself unless you just really love the combat of it, which to me, I feel like was the worst part of it, then you're not even really going to have much to play, because like auto grab, you don't really have to think with the traversal. You don't have to think with the puzzles either. Shadow a little bit, but even then, they're just, it's plays itself essentially. It's just it's a walking simulator that that just gives you cutscenes to watch. So this is what happens. You pay all this money and you don't sell that well. Or you sell a lot, but you can't make up for it because it's just so much money that you're pouring into it, when the gameplay doesn't even have the substance that the classic games did, not even close. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, for example, cost between 110 and 135 million to produce and market, making it one of the most expensive games ever made. By the time Crystal Dynamics celebrated the Tomb Raider franchise's 25th anniversary, Shadow of the Tomb Raider had sold close to 9 million units, but it took almost 3 years to get there. Deus Ex Mankind Divided had a similar story. It cost roughly 70 million CAD to produce Mankind Divided in 2016, and likely many millions more to advertise it. But the game's sales were initially disappointing to Square Enix, as is often the case with its Western games. By 2022, however, total sales for Mankind Divided and Human Revolution totaled $12 million, or 12 million no, that's the sale copies. Okay. According to Embracer Group's numbers, those are strong sales, but it took over half a decade for Deus Ex to get there, and thus the risk of bankrolling future entries just isn't worthwhile. Yeah, I think I really said enough. I don't have to read this whole thing, but this is the problem with a lot of Western games. When you compare Western and Eastern games, okay? Like, Japan makes fun freaking games, dude. First of all, they don't always bow to the woke stuff. Secondly, they actually make fun games. They make stylized characters. Not everything has all this expensive mocap and Hollywood-esque realism. Okay? And their games are just, they fully embrace when they're over the top, and they're just fun. So there's a reason why Square Enix's Eastern properties were doing better than their Western ones. We need Western studios to stop all trying to be Hollywood experiences and be fun again. Please, for the love of freaking heck. Also, I wish that Tomb Raider wasn't in Western hands in general. Or in American hands in general, I should say. Tomb Raider just isn't supposed to be. Tomb Raider needs to be in like British hands again. I really wish it could be, but I mean, at the very least, some sort of European hands. It just doesn't. I don't like the Hollywood-esque Tomb Raider feel. I don't like it. Didn't like it with the movies. Now, as much as I did like the movies for what they were and some elements of them. I feel like Tomb Raider, that's what made Tomb Raider go downhill after the first Tomb Raider movie. Period. Tomb Raider was so freaking perfect before then. Okay? And it was when Hollywood got a hold of it that things started going downhill. That's when they started adding the over-dramatic stories with Lara Croft's dad. That's when they started shoehorning that. So when they changed Lara Croft's backstory from being like a, it's American Hands that did that. It really is. Obviously, I love America. I'm proud to be an American. But, dude, I don't like how they make games. Don't like what they do with game properties right now. For the most part, with some exceptions. Don't like the Hollywood focus. Don't like it. And that's what killed Tomb Raider for me, is ever since it fell victim of trying to be a Hollywood experience with the movies. And ever since then, so it's sad. That's a sad thing about something that's so charming and great and indie feeling that gets mainstream, And it's only gotten worse ever since. So we'll see what the future holds. Yeah. We'll see what Embracer does. I think the best thing they could possibly do right now is just whatever Crystal Dynamics is working on right now, whatever they've done, freaking scrap it. Scrap it all. Start first and foremost with some remasters. Just remaster the old games, okay? Remaster the first 3 games. Put it in like some sort of bundle. Or, you can do them one at a time, like did Toys for Bob do that with all of them at once? Or I can't remember. But either way, remaster them, keep the charm, don't change anything. You want to tweak just ever so slightly some of the controls. Even then, don't overhaul them. I know people complain about the controls, but they were such an essential part of the game. If you resort to like these auto grabs and things like that, then you're taking away the experience that was necessary for platforming being such a core element of the game. So yeah, go ahead and get remasters, however you want to push them out. Just remaster the classic titles. The first 5 especially, absolutely necessary for remasters. Keep them faithful. Keep the charm of them. Make them playable well. Make them look good. And all that jazz. And see how that performs. I'm confident that they would do well, but for some reason, a lot of people don't think so. See how that performs and then move on from there. Figure out what you got to do from there. If they sell well, then hey, let's continue the franchise with the heart of the classic games going. You know what I mean? Like, let's rebuild a classic type experience and modernize it. But if for some reason, okay, I eat my words here, and the remasters would not perform well, in that case, overhaul it. Do what you got to do. Figure out what you got to do. Figure out that balance. Completely overhaul it. Start again. Do not go with the ridiculously high budgets. Keep it indie feeling, okay? And overhaul it. However, you got to do it. Ideally, toss it over to another studio, in my opinion. That's just how I feel. I don't like Crystal Dynamics having Tomb Raider. Don't like it. All right. Richard Lee says, watch out. The MWO, the Melanie World Order, is taking over, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Oh, this made me laugh so hard. All right, so Dorothy Morgan says, it's so easy to push blame and responsibility when looking in from outside. This was regarding the shoplifting experience and like talking about cops in general. And while people will often say things could have been different, but the truth is that in the moment, things are happening fast and escalation of the situation is faster. Anybody can say that they would have done something different, but the truth is, in that moment, you don't get time to think, and more often than not, you will move on reflex and instinct rather than reason. This is so freaking true, and training is important for this reason, so I'm not going to say, I'm not going to give any excuse not to have proper training, but just saying, like, when you think about, like, the military or cops and stuff like that, like, when your life is on the line and you have, like, less than a split second to react to something, and you're purely in fight or flight mode, I mean, it's so easy to judge other people and say what you would do, but you don't know what you would do. How many times are we in awkward social situations even, and somebody says something that catches us off guard, and we reply like, really weird or something, or we do something stupid, we say something stupid, and then our friend will be like, dude, why'd you do that? I don't know, I just panicked, I just reacted. Yeah, you sometimes get in autopilot mode. And so in a fight or flight situation, that's gonna happen. You're gonna react. And, obviously there are times where people react wrong, or there are times where people are irresponsible and they should be punished. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but there are also many times where it's a split second, like, fight or flight response, dude, and you don't know what you would do in that kind of situation. And this is why, when I think of, like, military and stuff like that, I mean, my dad was in the Army for 21 years, and he's a combat veteran. And he says that, they train so freaking much, because they train so much in the Army and stuff like that, that whenever he was put in situations like fight or flight mode, in combat, he said, because, you ask about it, you're curious, like, how it was that must be terrifying. And he says you kind of just fall into autopilot and your training kicks in, because you've done it so much that it's like a reflex, that you just default back into where your training kicked in. And so yeah, it's very important to have proper training. But even then, there will always be some nuanced situations that weren't exactly as training went. So yeah, I think it's important to keep that in mind with stuff. Andrew Duffy says, from some of the news reports I've read, it sounds like the driver might have tried to run over the officers in an attempt to flee, which, okay, I can understand why they would have reacted the way they did if that was the case. That could be completely wrong. The investigation is still ongoing, so we'll have to wait for more information to be released. Yeah, and that's one reason why I felt like the Kotaku article was too hasty with its judgments and stuff, like, because, I mean, it's Kotaku, so what do you expect? Observant Owl says, cops in the Netherlands are trained to aim for the legs, ... Well, if they are, that's absolutely ridiculously stupid. I don't care what anybody says, that there's always, you should try to shoot the legs. You don't try to shoot the legs. The limbs move faster than any part of your body, okay? When you have someone coming after you in a dangerous situation, in this case, we were talking about my other video before, what the guy with a deadly weapon who had used it on a police officer, someone with a deadly weapon, and you're trying to neutralize the threat, someone who has used said weapon too, especially, dude, do you realize the marksmanship, the Legolas with a gun you gotta be to hit someone's limbs while they're running? I feel like people who think that aiming for the legs, first of all, is going to neutralize the target, which is stupid because, yeah. But second of all, if they think that's a viable option, they ain't never shot a gun in their freaking life, bro. I don't care if the Netherlands trained for it. Good luck. Good freaking luck hitting the legs. All right, Snib says, look how it was worded. They say things like, none of the suspects were reported to have any weapons, which isn't the same as the suspects being unarmed. They absolutely could have been armed, but it wasn't reported yet. Vice and Kotaku are notorious for severely bending the truth to the point of lying outright. Wait for body cams and an explanation from someone who understands dealing with violence as an officer. Donut operator comes to mind. The true Dowster says Romans, excuse me, I got like hiccup burp combos. Romans 8:28 is easily one of my favorite Bible verses, and one I go back to as a reminder that God is always, always in control. And that is a wonderful thing. One Old Testament equivalent is Genesis 50:20. Thanks for sharing, Melanie Mac. Go boom. Thank you so much. That's such a nice comment. That is so important to remember, because and that's why the Bible is always telling us, don't stress. God is constantly telling us, why are you worrying? Like, what is ever accomplished from worrying? Like, I got this. I'm in control. You know what I mean? There are certain, and it's true. And I obviously don't always listen, because I can worry and stress and be anxious about stuff that are out of my control, which is absolutely stupid. But here's the thing is what I try to tell myself and remember in life is that if something is making you worry, A, is it in your control? And if it is, then do something about it. But B, if it's out of your control, then you can't do anything about it anyway. God's in control. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So, and even if something seems like it's bad that's happening, it might not be bad. It might be for your freaking good, dude. Like, how many times is hindsight 2020 and we're like, oh, I'm really glad things worked out the way they did there. Even at the time, I wasn't, you know? All right. Proverbs 16:28 is today's verse of the day. I picked this. It says, a dishonest man spreads strife and a whisperer separates close friends. I picked this because, I don't know, today I found this. Where is it? And I tweeted it. That says, anybody who easily believes lies about you without hearing your side of the story was already looking for a way to be against you. I saw this on my Instagram, and it just made me think about, like last summer when I had like the cancel crowd come after me and all this kind of stuff, and I lost a lot of people who I thought were my friends. But at the end of the day, without any sort of conversation, without any sort of like trying to hear your side of the thing, they'll just drop you like a hot potato. Then they really weren't in your corner in the first place. And when you think about cancel culture in general and stuff and social media, you will find there are so many people who virtue signal and want to pretend like they are so righteous and pretend like they're calling out bad people. And they are spreading stuff about other people, spreading business that they shouldn't be in a lot of cases, and trying to make someone lose their livelihood and their friends and their colleagues and all that kind of stuff. And that's freaking messed up. You can't call yourself virtuous and do that. You just can't. And yeah, I don't know. I just felt like this was, I don't know, applicable to a lot of things going on in social media and all that kind of stuff in general. So anyway, there you have it for today's video. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you all tomorrow. In the meantime, go boom.